Only the brave will. I am the eye of Obel. 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 We fighting? Take me. 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 We fighting?
Jet thrusters and a crippling crush on phasers 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 and a crippling crush on phasers. That's right, it's a Vivian guide video. And that's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. That's right, it's a Vivian guide. We'll go over. Everything you need to know about Vivian. 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 Everything you need to know about Everything you need to know about Vivian. 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 Everything you need to know about Hello and welcome to my channel. I went to lose. Gaming. What do you get when you mix vampires, jet thrust,
Only the brave will win. That's me! I've got your back. I am the Eye of Obel. Disintegrating. Yeah, that was easy. There's no time to lose. You're in my...
There it is.
Show no mercy. Okay.
Cracking down!
It's my turn. Hey. Roger. An opening. It's a solid hit. A beautiful shooting star. There it goes. Fracture.
Seth, your crime won't be forgiven!
Target confirmed. Good.
Backup's here!
At your command.
No use resisting!
Here I come. Standing by. Great hit. An opening.
Seth, reporting in!
Copy that.
Come on!
My turn.
No use! You're under arrest! You asked for it!
Home run! They're exposed. Eliminating target.
Backup's here!
An opening. It's my turn.
Really?
You got it. Better buckle up.
Stand still!
I'm cruising now. Oh, they got backup.
Starlight, shine bright!
And the winner is me! And a dizzy. Healing senses fired up!
Leave it, don't move!
Move it! Eat this!
Sorry.
Here's a taste of the abyss. Let's make this quick.
Prepare to face judgment!
No escape.
Don't touch me.
Idiot. Better not get my trust hurt. Don't you know? Get my dress dirty and okay.
Have a couple more.
Here I come. Hey. Careful! Stay away from me. Worms belong in the dirt. Don't touch me. Oh, better.
Commence demolition!
Follow me.
And a crippling crush on Phaethon. That's right, it's a Vivian guide video. In this ultimate guide, we'll go over everything you need to know about Vivian. Vivian is an ether anomaly agent who specializes in blooming her teammates' anomaly damage, as well as dealing some decent supplementary corrosion-related damage herself. And with a blatant disregard for lower body in-flight safety protocols, the only thing hotter than her propulsion system is her undying love for Phaethon. In this video, we'll see just how far simping for Phaethon can get you by going over her entire kit, best drives and stats, Wengens, Mindscapes, teams, a showcase, and finally my opinion on Vivian at the end of the video. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. Vivian's kit is actually very complicated, but we're going to hopefully simplify it so that even a vampire can understand. Vivian's kit revolves around flight feathers and guard feathers. Flight feathers are indicated by this middle dot being lit up, and here we can see we have 2 flight feathers. And if we use some basic attacks to get her into butt jetpack mode, aka fluttering frock as it's called in game, Vivian can now perform basic attack fluttering frock suspension, which she's invincible during and which also converts her flight feathers into guard feathers. Guard feathers are indicated by this outer ring being lit up. So why are these feathers important? So Vivian will consume a guard feather when any character hits an enemy with an EX special. So he has no elemental gauges on him, but we're going to use Ambi's EX special. And we can see that bit of ether damage, which, well, did some ether damage and also filled up a bit of ether anomaly. Now, more importantly, if the enemy has an attribute anomaly on them, so let's go ahead and apply Assault. You will see this bloom pop up, and we're going to hit it with another EX special. You can see this bloom pop up again. And finally, why the heck, one more time, a bloom popped up again. So what the heck is a bloom? Well, it's from her core ability, which if the enemy has an anomaly on them, hitting an enemy with Feather Bloom will trigger an bloom that scales off of how much damage the anomaly did to the enemy. A bloom damage also scales based on Vivian's anomaly proficiency stat as well as what element it is. For example, one bloom number that does stand out is Assault, and while it might look low at 47.93% of the last assault's damage, yes, a bloom does scale off of, for example, Jane's massive crit damage assaults, and you can often deal 3 to 4 of these blooms during one of Jane's assaults, which can double or nearly triple Jane's assault damage output. And also in her core skills additional ability, where you need an anomaly character or another ether character on her team. Basically, when another character applies an attribute anomaly on the enemy, Vivian will also attack the enemy with basic attack Feather Bloom and consume 1 guard feather. Okay, let's take a quick look at this clip, and right here at this still shot, you can see that there are actually 2 blooms, both scaling off of Jane's assault number right there. And the reason why this is happening is because Jane used an EX special to activate assault, which triggered the additional ability from Vivian's passive, as well as the standard Feather Bloom activation, which is to hit an enemy with an EX special. And one more quick note about her additional ability. It does specifically say when Vivian's ally, so this means that if Vivian triggers a corrosion, she won't get an additional bloom via her triggering corrosion. Although Vivian's EX special will still be able to trigger a bloom. As we can see, Vivian will want to spend as many guard feathers as possible to trigger as many blooms as possible, effectively multiplying the amount of anomaly damage dealt to the enemy. As such, her gameplay loop is quite simple. Generate flight feathers, convert them to guard feathers, apply anomalies to the enemy, and smack the enemy with EX specials like they owe you some limited edition faith in merch. Now the next question is, how does Vivian generate flight feathers? First, we have her EX special, which costs 60 energy and generates 3 flight feathers. Well, if you use her EX special, I've swapped to Jane, she will automatically cast that basic attack Fluttering Frock suspension, which converts her feathers, her flight feathers, over into guard feathers, and she happens to be invincible during that Fluttering Frock suspension attack. So this means that you can pretty much instantly swap cancel her EX special, and she will automatically perform basic attack Fluttering Frock suspension to generate and convert 3 flight feathers to guard feathers. And before continuing, just know that every single thing that generates flight feathers for Vivian will automatically follow it up with Fluttering Frock suspension. So you should swap cancel when possible out of all of the following ways to generate flight feathers. Anyway, the next way for her to generate flight feathers is through her basic attack Waltz, which generates 1 flight feather. You can perform basic attack Waltz when she enters Spinny Umbrella mode. Thumbs up this video if you think Hoiver should hire me to name abilities. And Vivian enters Spinny Umbrella mode after, before, a quick assist or a dodge counter. Generally speaking, the most practical things to actually enter Spinny Umbrella mode are via quick assist and dodge counter. As an extra bonus, Waltz has a built-in dodge, which if you dodge an enemy attack with, will generate 1 additional flight feather. The next method to generate flight feathers is through her chain attack, which simply generates 2 flight feathers. And her ultimate generates a whopping 5 flight feathers. Finally, we have her defensive assist into assist follow-up, which generates 2 flight feathers, making Vivian a unique anomaly agent that is nicely rewarded for performing defensive assists. This leads us to some bread and butter attack strings to generate 5 flight feathers. So what ends up happening quite often with Vivian is you'll do a defensive assist to get 2, you use her EX special to get 3 more flight feathers, and we can see there that now she has all 5 guard feathers. Another option, which is helpful against enemies where defensive assists are a rarity, is you can perform a quick assist, then basic attack Waltz, EX special cancel, then you can do a basic attack Waltz again. I didn't mention this earlier because of information overload, but you can actually cancel the jet butt pack mode by holding dash during the EX special. And when canceled during her EX special, now Vivian will go into Spinny Umbrella mode. One more useful thing to know about her feathers is that you can have up to 5 of each feather. This is getting into more min-maxy territory, but you can store additional flight feathers for use later, so as not to overcap on guard feathers. For most of us though, like myself included, we'll just be automatically converting our feathers most of the time. There are a couple more details I should mention as well. For example, part of Vivian's core ability actually applies Vivian's prophecy to an enemy suffering from anomaly if her feather bloom hits an enemy with an anomaly on them. This Vivian's prophecy continues to deal a tiny amount of damage every 0.55 seconds, and while this tiny bit of damage can crit, more importantly, it's useful for triggering anomaly ticks like for shock and corrosion, where normally you have to hit the enemy regularly to actually activate the shock and corrosion damage. And another one, the next supplementary detail of her kit is that her corruption damage and corruption disorder are increased by 12%, which is a nice boost to her corrosion type damage. And there are certainly more details that I've not mentioned in this video, but hopefully this information will be a good start for you to start corrupting and blooming your friendly neighborhood ethereals. For her talent priority, prioritize her core above all else. As we can see, her damage distribution is mostly all based on her blooms, which scale off of her core ability, as well as she does some decent damage with corrosion and disorder, and all this damage isn't affected by her talent levels. Her talent levels, which makes up her crit scaling damage, only makes up a measly 13% or so of her damage output, which makes leveling her talents not particularly important. Anyway, after her core ability, you can level her basics, and then after that, her specials, chain and assist, and then followed by her dodge. We've made it to the nerdy math stuff of the video, starting with Vivian's drive sets. Alright, before continuing, let me just say the calcs for her are an absolute nightmare because there are so many variables to assume, but fortunately the main takeaways end up being reasonably consistent. Vivian, being the vampire that she is, really likes Phaethon. Okay, I was hoping to have something more clever for that, but that's why for the drive set, just use the 4-piece Phaethon's Melody for Vivian. Vivian appreciates the 8% Anomaly Mastery from the 2-piece set bonus, which, as a reminder, Anomaly Mastery increases the amount of ether she applies. And the 4-piece set bonus effectively gives her 45% Anomaly Proficiency whenever an EX special is used on her team, as well as 25% ether damage whenever a teammate uses an EX special. For the 2-piece set, I recommend the 2-piece Freedom Blues or the 2-piece Chaos Jazz. Vivian scales best off of the Anomaly Proficiency stat since it boosts all of her damage, including her A-Bloom damage that scale off of her allies' Anomaly damage. You can consider the 2-piece Freedom Blues plus 2-piece Chaotic Metal plus 2-piece something else while you're farming for the 4-piece Phaethons, but any other combination just isn't really recommended for Vivian, so you'll definitely want to eventually end up with the 4-piece Phaethons. For the main stats, I recommend Anomaly Proficiency in slot 4, Ether Damage in slot 5, and Anomaly Mastery in slot 6. For slot 4, there's no question about it, just use Anomaly Proficiency since she scales best off of Anomaly Proficiency. For slot 5, swapping to attack percent or pen ratio doesn't lead to a huge amount of damage loss, so if they roll a lot more Anomaly Proficiency substat rolls than your ether damage, they can be worth considering. Similarly, attack percent in slot 6 increases Vivian's own damage substantially, generally enough to compensate for lower uptime on corrosion, and overall, either Anomaly Mastery or attack percent are great in slot 6, with my personal preference being Anomaly Mastery for more frequent and consistent corrosion application. Next we have Vivian's substats. It's actually very simple, just get as much Anomaly Proficiency as possible. Attack percent is not a wasted roll though, so it's fine to get some of those as well. Sadly, all the other substats are pretty bad on her. Well, that was actually a lot easier to explain than I expected. Fortunately, building Vivian is quite simple. Just simp for Phaethon with Phaethon's Melody and get as much Anomaly Proficiency as possible. Up next we have Vivian's Wenjins. Breaking news! Local Phaethon Simp signature Wenjin, Flight of Fancy, is her best option. This thing has anomaly proficiency as its secondary stat, and it provides 40% more anomaly buildup for her, and most importantly, it basically gives her another 120 anomaly proficiency since she constantly deals ether damage. In total, this Wenjin gives her 210 anomaly proficiency, higher than any other Wenjin. Besides her signature Wenjin though, overall her next best option, which also happens to be her best free-to-play friendly option, is the Weeping Gemini. Since it's craftable, you'll be able to get it to upgrade 5. For every anomaly applied to the target, Vivian gains 48 anomaly proficiency up to 4 times. However, once the target either dies or recovers from a stun, this is reset back to 0. In long fights and deadly assault, you won't have much difficulty maintaining stacks on this thing, especially for some of the bosses where you only stun them twice with an anomaly team over the entire 3 minutes. As such, it's actually pretty common to maintain an average of over 3 stacks, and in this situation, in theory it can do up to 86% of her signature Wenjin's damage. Unfortunately, for shorter fights or faster stunning situations, the Weeping Gemini performs much worse, at around 76% of her signature Wenjin. So yeah, it has a very wide range, but it's a great free-to-play friendly option with a high potential damage ceiling. Up next, I'd say her next best option is the Battle Pass Wenjin, the Electro Lip Gloss, especially at upgrade 5. You'll generally have an anomaly on the enemy, so this thing's passive is pretty easy to maintain. However, the attack and bonus damage only buff Vivian's personal damage and don't improve her bloom damage that scales off of her teammates, which is why it ends up falling short. The Rainforest Gourmet is also a usable Wenjin on Vivian, like it is on literally any stun agent, so if you don't have the resources for Weeping Gemini, feel free to use this in the meantime. I've included other Wenjins as well, so feel free to take a look at this chart, but they are either all just notably worse or something you'd rather use on another agent like Jane's Signature, the Sharpened Stinger, which you should be using on Jane instead of Vivian. We've made it to Vivian's Mindscapes and investment priority. Since this is the part with the worst viewer retention, here is Vivian when she sees Phaethon. Her Mindscape 1 honestly seems like a pretty insane Mindscape, providing effectively more flight feathers and also increasing all anomaly and disorder damage received by targets under Vivian's prophecy by 16%. Now you're going to see wildly different numbers for her Mindscape 1 between different theory crafters, so I've decided to land somewhere in the middle. Basically, her Mindscape 1 gives 1 flight feather for every 4 guard feathers spent, and of course, spending that additional free flight feather also counts towards this. This leads to 33% additional feathers if you're able to spend them all optimally. However, I've assumed just 66% efficiency of spending additional feathers. With this in mind, her Mindscape 1 is as such very powerful, as it also increases the anomaly damage dealt. As such, since the Weeping Gemini is a great option for more difficult fights like Deadly Assault, generally speaking, I recommend her Mindscape 1 over her signature Wenjin. These additional feathers are also very helpful in Weeping Gemini is a great option for more difficult fights like Deadly Assault. Generally speaking, I recommend her Mindscape 1 over her signature Wenjin. These additional feathers are also very helpful in fights with minimal defense assist opportunities, as you'll have more opportunities to generate feathers. Also, her Mindscape 1 is a stepping stone towards Mindscape 2, which is frankly just quite broken, increasing her A-Bloom damage by 30% with an additional 15% res shred, making it completely busted. So yeah, in short, I recommend going for her Mindscape 1 and Mindscape 2 before her signature Wenjin. After with an additional 15% res shred, making it completely busted. So yeah, in short, I recommend going for her Mindscape 1 and Mindscape 2 before her signature Wenjin. After her Mindscape 2 though, I would get her signature Wenjin. Mindscape 3 is unsurprisingly pretty terrible because she scales poorly with her talent levels. Mindscape 4 starts the fight off with 5 additional guard feathers, as well as giving Vivian 12% mega attack. Mindscape 5 is also terrible because she scales very poorly off of her talent levels, and Mindscape 6 is a massive headache, and there's honestly no great way to calculate this, just like, well, frankly, all the calcs in this video. But the real value of her Mindscape 6 is being able to front load a ton of nuke-a-bloom damage. Essentially, Vivian will spend all her guard feathers every time she uses her butt jetpack attack. This scales comically with Mindscapes on her teammates. So if you're a whale and you've reached this point, you'll be clearing content way faster than what the calcs here reflect, because she scales off of her teammates as well. Anyway, this is a broken Mindscape, especially if you've horizontally scaled with another anomaly agent, like with $2,000 Jane as a teammate. Fortunately for teams, Vivian is fairly straightforward despite being such a complicated character. She does great with literally any other anomaly agent. Let's start with, in my opinion, her best feeling team with Jane and Astra. Jane deals massive instances of assault damage, and Vivian can effectively double or even triple the amount of assault damage that Jane does. Astra Yao is great because when she triggers her Tremolo, which is her shiny quick assist, it counts as an EX special for just 25 energy, making Astra Yao a very efficient way to activate blooms. Also, Astra is perfect because she's able to provide full buff uptime on both Vivian and Jane, and the additional quick assist on Vivian also improves her feather generation as well. Of course, you can substitute Astra Yao with other supports like Lucy, Caesar, Nicole, Seth, etc., but I do think Astra Yao, at least as of Vivian's release, is the best option. And as mentioned, you can use literally any anomaly agent, with one of Vivian's most accessible free-to-play friendly teams being Piper and Lucy. Piper is unique in that she can, for very little energy, activate 2 guard feathers with her enhanced EX special. A funny team that I honestly kind of like is with Bernice, as now you have no on-field agent. Still, this is a pretty solid team as Bernice can burn through Vivian's feathers very efficiently. And needless to say, Vivian works great with electric anomaly agents like Yanagi and Grace. Now, I have seen many people ask, is Vivian good with Miyabi? The answer is yes, she is. Vivian is a great low field time disorder triggerer for Miyabi, which helps build up Miyabi's blue balls. Vivian's bloom damage does take a big hit though, because Miyabi is not built to maximize shatter damage, which is what Vivian's bloom damage scales off of. It scales off of shatter and not frostburn, but Miyabi herself does a ton of damage to compensate. Now, in terms of whether or not she's better than Yanagi for Miyabi, and personally I think Yanagi is just better for Miyabi than Vivian is, because Yanagi's polarity disorders are simply too efficient for giving Miyabi her blue balls. Anyway, a couple less mainstream teams are a triple anomaly team. If you love pure chaos, then a team like this is a lot of fun. Although I don't think it's better than Astra Yao variants, it's perfectly functional in the least functional way, which is what makes it great. And finally, I don't strongly recommend this next team, but I wanted to point it out for those who might not have the aforementioned options. It's a hyper corrosion team with, something like Astra plus Nicole, which focuses on maximizing corrosion damage and corrosion of blooms. This team felt noticeably worse than the previous teams and will likely require more experimentation, but it is an idea I thought was worth mentioning. Alright, I got a few additional runs to supplement my previous Vivian Creator Experience Server video where I already did quite a few runs there. If you want to see a more free-to-play friendly team with Piper, as well as the build that I used for it, and for that video I also have, I think, a Miyabi team as well as an M0U1 Jane team. So for this video, not to overlap with that one too much, I decided to include 3 additional runs, with this first team being a pure chaos team with triple anomaly, Bernice, Vivian, as well as Jane. So we do have an on-fielder with Jane to drive the 2 other more off-field anomaly agents. And this team is a lot of fun, although I got to be completely honest, I don't know what I'm doing with this team, and I also only did one run attempt for these additional teams because, let's be real, I spent so much time on this video, so please don't take these scores as anything indicative of, something that's extremely anecdotal, which is also why I didn't really want to include like the scores comparisons for the previous video, because really including the buffs that we have for this as well as the enemy weakness to account for and the enemy debuffs. You know, the way that these scores are never really truly balanced. At least it's pretty hard to make it truly balanced due to all these variables. So yeah, I mean, characters are designed for specific fights, and that's just the way it is in Zenless Zone Zero, or frankly most of these gacha games that we play these days. But anyway, there is obviously a ton of room to improve for this Pure Chaos team, but even then, his Pure Chaos team with all signature wenches, by the way, M0 UN investments, to manage a pretty modest 32,912 score. Modest in terms of the investment level, in my opinion, as well as, you know, the amount of effort that I put into it. So this next team is really interesting. It is a Hyper Corrosion team, and I feel like there can definitely be some better like teammate choices. I was thinking perhaps even like a character like Sokaku might be better than Nicole here to provide longer lasting buffs. And I actually need to test if Sokaku's EX special actually activates feathers, because one big issue with this team is you have the goal is to maximize the Ether of Bloom damage, and I definitely think Nicole is going to be a better like damage amplifier than, for example, what's Sokaku's face. However, the thing about this is that you cannot spend, or at least I could not spend my feathers at all. I was always like super capped on feathers, even though the corrosion damage numbers are actually looking pretty healthy. The bloom damage numbers, like, you know, over 300,000 damage here and there, 400,000 ether of bloom there. Now, I think if we optimize the rotations a bit by having Astro Yao as well as Nicole actually somehow manage to trigger the corruptions to, you know, increase the number of feathers that you can spend. But yeah, this team is, it's all going to be about how can you spend more feathers. And honestly, you know, with a single run, there's no way I'm going to be able to optimize anything like that. So yeah, perhaps even a different team choice, but I think it's actually viable. And I think players are going to need to experiment a bit more than I've had time to, because, you know, there's just so many characters, so many teams, so many variables, and you can only really spend so much time on each of them. And in my case, literally just one run each. I had to edit this entire video as well as just to, you know, put everything together. It's a ton of work. The calcs for this character, oh my god, took way too long. Way longer than I like to admit, even though, like, you know, the takeaways were pretty obvious, frankly speaking, but just the amount of calcs and the amount of work that it took was a ton, and I had to consult multiple friends of mine, including, seeing which, I'm Rivenous, as well as the people, the good people over at Pridewind. Do check them out, and especially for I'm Rivenous, I wish I had the time to write a proper plug for his website, and, you know, unfortunately it's here kind of at the end of this video. But yeah, definitely check out his new website, which is a pretty cool statistics aggregator, as well as like basically the Akasha network for Genshin, but here for Zenless Zone Zero. And, you know, Rivenous and his friends have been updating the site and just, you know, really adding a lot of features to it. So, you know, even if it's missing some features now, you can sure as heck be darn that they're going to be adding it soon enough. Anyway, this next team is the Omega Leviathan team. I was yapping about I'm Rivenous' site, this entire team. Didn't even talk about the current run that's going on. Omega Leviathan team, M6, U5, all across the board. Single run, obviously, no issue with, you know, getting 60,000 for this, you know, for this mission. And I sure as heck hope so if you're spending like, what, almost $6,000 here. So very expensive team. You can see some absolutely massive blooms. And I don't think I'm fully utilizing Vivian's Mindscape 6 properly here. And I think that's going to be key, is to figure out how you can basically get those super big Mindscape 6 nukes on top of assaults. But for my single run, well, this is what I ended up with, which was, you know, probably in all things considered a pretty slow, what is that, 77 second clear time. And here's one last goofy clip with a 10 million damage of bloom against a level 10 enemy in training mode, just for fun. You know, I just want to see what kind of number I could get on the screen, and hey, there you go. So let me know what you think about Vivian down in the comments below. And I gotta be completely honest, she definitely seems like a bit like Kafka on her release, supporting essentially dot characters or anomaly characters in Zenless Zone Zero's case. And the good news though is that the anomaly characters that she is supporting is not only literally Black Swan and I guess was Sampo or something. That's like all Kafka had as options. But in this case, for for Vivian, she's got a lot more options, and hopefully Zenless Zone Zero, keeps updating previous anomaly agents as well as introducing a couple new ones and perhaps characters that might be able to work with Vivian. And one thing that's really interesting about the current characters for Vivian, it's only really Jane right now that maximizes the actual anomaly damage. For example, characters like Bernice don't really have anything in their kit that jacks up the burn ticks, and same with Yanagi, same with Miyabi. They don't have anything in their kits that jack up the shock values or jack up the shatter value in the case of Miyabi for Vivian to take full advantage of. So me personally, I'm hoping for some additional support, more so than, for example, what Kafka got in Honkai Star Rail moving forward. But as of release, as you can see, Vivian is quite a flexible character, and I really got to hand it to the Zenless Zone Zero team. They are great at making characters that, can work interchangeably between multiple teams. And in Vivian's case, she does a great job enhancing other anomaly agents. And yeah, if you like the anomaly playstyle and you're willing to put in the extra brain power and IQ and problem solving and practice in order to get it to work, Vivian is going to be a good character for you. But if anomaly's not really your thing, and if perhaps, you might struggle managing all the different resources, personally, Vivian might not be the best choice for your account. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about Vivian down in the comments below, and if I missed anything for this guide video. And don't forget to check out
can easily do 500,000 damage every 4 to 5 seconds, while being off field, without her signature. And she's cute too. May I introduce to you Vivian Banshee. I've spent the last week testing all of Vivian's teams and made about 80 pages of calculations. Her team, that is, to answer all the questions you might have about Vivian. Get yourself a tea or coffee and settle in, because this video will be lengthy. Timestamps are in the description, so let's talk about her kit and how she plays, her best weapons, disk drives and disk drive sets, her combos, her main and substats, her teams and mindscapes, and lastly, let's also talk about her pros and cons. Welcome, I am Rivenous, and this is your complete in-depth guide to Vivian Banshee. Vivian is an ether of field anomaly DPS whose playstyle is centered around building up her unique resource called Guard Feathers. Guard Feathers are then spent whenever any squad member casts an EX special or inflicts an anomaly effect, and Vivian will then cast her follow-up attack, which, truthfully, just does a shitload of damage, is the mechanic responsible for the thumbnail, and does not only scale of her own anomaly proficiency, but also scales of your other anomaly DPS. Which means the better your Jane, Piper, Grace, Yanagi or Miyabi, the better Vivian will be. To understand better how she plays and works, let's talk about her kit first. And let's start by skipping the unimportant parts. You will never use her special, dodge counter or dash attack. Great, with that out of the way, instead let's talk And let's start by skipping the unimportant parts. You will never use her special dodge counter or dash attack. Great, with that out of the way, instead let's talk about the important parts of her kit, and let's begin with her unique resources. Yes, plural. Flight feathers and guard feathers. Casting her EX special, assist follow-up, chain attack, ultimate or basic attack fluttering frog will create flight feathers, and casting her floating basic attack, which is the fluttering frog, will then convert all of her flight feathers into guard feathers. While she has guard feathers, she will then cast follow-up attacks from off-field whenever any squad member uses an EX special or inflicts an anomaly, and every cast requires and consumes one guard feather. Because her indicators look slightly confusing, the middle points represent the flight feathers and the outer ring the guard feathers. Let's talk about her basics, because they are much more confusing than they need to be. Actually, they are so convoluted even Moses couldn't part them if he wanted to. Anyway, if you have played Gingy from Wuthering Waves before, Vivian works similarly to her, except Gingy actually deals damage using it. After casting her basic 4, she gets access to basic attack Noblewoman Waltz, and after using basic attack Noblewoman Waltz, she will automatically transition to her flying state, called basic attack Fluttering Frog. I will refer to them as grounded and flying state going forwards respectively. During the flying state, she can then cast basic attack Fluttering Frog, and that resets her back to her first basic form. Well, if she is on field, that is. The neat part here, however, is that you will never actively use any of that. You might use it unknowingly, but never actively. Casting her basic attack during the grounded state will create one flight feather, and casting her basic attack during the flying state will then convert all of her flight feathers to guard feathers. However, if she has any flight feathers, switching her out will automatically have her enter the flying state and also automatically cast her basic attack Fluttering Frog while off field. So here is a very neat graphic explaining it. Pause if you need to. I spent a lot of time on this, about 2 minutes. Again, if Vivian has any guard feathers, whenever any squad member now casts an EX special, she will follow up with her basic attack Feather Bloom, and this can also trigger while she is off field. Because her EX special, chain, ultimate and assist follow up all generate flight feathers, the actual game plan usually looks like this. We first parry using Vivian, then her assist follow up, and then switch her out. Optionally, we can also cast her EX special before switching her out and then instantly swap cancel the EX special. This leaves us with 2 or 5 guard feathers respectively. And truthfully, I literally never did anything else except those 2 combos during the entire week of playing her, so her basics exist and you might unintentionally use them, but they really have no reason to be the way they are currently. Anyway, let's finish up her kit. She can hold up to 5 feathers, and her EX special generates 3, her chain and assist follow-up generate 2, and her ultimate generates 5. Let's talk about her core passive, because that thing is the entire reason she does so much fucking damage. damage. Every time her follow-up attack is cast, she will then trigger an additional instance of anomaly damage based on the current active anomaly aura, equal to a percentage times her anomaly proficiency. This additional damage instance is called a bloom, and it also means if your last inflicted anomaly was, for example, assault, the follow-up attack will deal a percentile of assault's damage, which means that damage is also physical. Essentially, that results in her having a double scaling. The first scalar being her anomaly proficiency, which we want to stack as high as possible, and the other scalar being your other DPS. Means the more anomaly damage your other agent does, the higher her bloom damage will be. Furthermore, it also inflicts a dot on the enemy, which is basically permanently active, so it will tick a few hundred times per run, about 300. But it also doesn't really do any damage, nor does it apply anomaly, and hence its main purpose is to trigger anomaly effects from off-field. For example, shock and corruption. She will also start combat with 2 flight feathers. Lastly, for her additional ability, it requires either an anomaly or ether agent, and this part unlocks her ability to also cast her basic attack Feather Bloom whenever an anomaly is afflicted. It also increases the damage of corruption and corruption disorders. Because Vivian's kit seems pretty complicated, and while I hope I made it somewhat understandable, let's still summarize her game plan. We use an assist follow-up or quick assist to get her on the field, then use her EX special to generate feathers and instantly switch her out again. If we used an assist follow-up, we can skip the EX special part. However, we can also use it simply and just leave with 5 feathers. We use her ultimate and chain attacks to maintain her stacks whenever we are out of stacks, and for example do not have her EX special or another opportunity to get her on field with, for example, assist follow-ups. However, you can still use your EX special whenever you see fit. Before we continue, there are some important remarks I want to make. First up, casting an EX special without an active anomaly aura on the enemy will still consume 1 guard feather, but not trigger a bloom. This is because it technically triggers Feather Bloom, and the Feather Bloom then triggers a bloom, but because there is no anomaly aura on the enemy, a bloom cannot actually trigger. Means to optimize her blooms and hence her damage, save your EX specials until the enemy is affected by an anomaly. Secondly, during her grounded state, which is indicated by her glowing and the umbrella being open, she cannot move. Furthermore, dashing or dodging will cancel this state. Third, if you idle within her flying state for too long, she will automatically exit the state and not convert any feathers even when switching her out. This results in you being unable to trigger a bloom. However, I also don't really see why you would literally go AFK during combat, so this one doesn't really matter too much, I suppose. For her skill priority, since 50 to 70% of your entire damage comes from a bloom and hence your core passive, depending on the team, we want to focus first and foremost on her core, then her basic attack into assist, into special and chain, and lastly dodge. In fact, you can probably leave dodge at level 1, and since I personally found myself using her assist follow-ups extremely frequently, the additional days is very helpful. Now the part you are all here for anyway, the weapons. But before that, pause the video now and leave me a comment on which ZZZ character has the best design in your opinion. For me, it is Bernice, it's Bernice. While I did calculate every single team and the overall results are different in terms of numbers, there is a clear takeaway. Since we want to stack AP on her and her weapon gives like 210 of it, it is to no one's surprise it being her best in slot. However, Weeping Gemini is surprisingly to no one, given how much AP it gives, her next best choice, which is great news for all of you free-to-play players out there. Fusion Compiler is super awkward to play, and even if it in theory can rank okayish, I would definitely not recommend it over, well, probably literally any other choice. Electro Lip Gloss is surprisingly not that great this time because, well, all she wants is AP and Rainforest Gourmet exists, but since Weeping is free and literally her second best choice, why would you take another weapon? But Riff, what about Time Weaver? Yes, don't you worry, I did not forget about it. Time Weaver has had a bug where the anomaly buildup provided was actually generic buildup and not electric buildup, despite the description. Unfortunately, this has now finally been patched, and that heavily impacts how well Time Weaver performs on her. This also means her choices of weapon do basically not change between any of the teams, as Weeping Gemini continues to be her second best choice, even if the percentiles change. I also want to note how I assume Astra for these calculations, you will see later during the team section on why that is, and using especially Nicole or a stunner like Trigger can change the weapon rankings by quite a bit, so keep that in mind. An example here being Weeping Gemini, which gets closer to 3 stacks average than 4 stacks if played with a stunner. Before we get to her sets, main and substats, let's quickly reiterate so we are all in the same boat. Compared to many other anomaly agents, she does not really have diminishing returns on anomaly proficiency. This means hitting 600 or technically even 700 AP on her is indeed viable, but the more AP you have, the more you shift her damage away from herself and towards your other carry. Except for Grace, about 1/3 of the total bloom damage is from herself, which does have diminishing returns for AP. But that also means 66% of the damage from her blooms is technically your other carry's damage, or well, a part of that, and that essentially is where this shift comes from. Having that in mind, let's talk about her sets. For her disk drive sets, we are definitely looking at a 4-piece Phaethons paired with either a 2-piece Freedom or Chaos Jazz in the best case. However, any 2-piece choice of Hormone, Astral Chaotic Metal or even Puffer does well enough. Again, her absolute main goal is to stack as much AP as possible while not completely neglecting attack percent, so if you have a 2-piece Hormone with a lot of anomaly proficiency substats, you can easily take that as a replacement for a 2-piece Freedom, for example. These are the main sets for the other teams, again pretty similar, but pause if you want. For her main stats, we are definitely looking at a non-negotiable anomaly proficiency in slot 4, ether damage in slot 5, and for slot 6 I personally would recommend anomaly mastery, but attack percent works out as well. Not only on my sheets, but also in actual gameplay tests. I do want to say, however, that anomaly mastery feels much smoother to play, and unless you have her Mindscape 2, at which point attack percent can actually be better, however that is only the case if played with Astra. Regardless, attack percent in slot 5 works too and is also her best choice at Mindscape 6. Here are the main stat calculations for the other teams, and again, while they are extremely similar, pause if you need to. For her substats, I was lazy and I only did Jane, so here you go. Please keep in mind the actual values change depending on your team, environment, mindscapes, weapon and also your actual current build, so don't take these at face value. Generally speaking, focus first and foremost on anomaly proficiency. Any attack percent roll is fine as well, but all other offensive stats we have are very low value. Again, your goal should mainly be to stack as much AP as possible. Before we talk about her teams, let's cover her mindscapes. And they change too depending on your team. Quite a bit actually. Vivian's M1 does not only give some quality of life by regenerating additional flight feathers, but also increases all anomaly and disorder damage by 16%, which is nothing to scoff at. This does not only boost her own damage, but also the damage of your other carry, which again will also be your own damage. So it's like double dipping basically. And well, it is one of the better M2s we have had so far. The same, however, cannot be said about her Mindscape 2. In fact, it is probably the best M2 we have in the game so far. While it is an insane 30% damage gain for Yanagi, Grace and Miyabi teams, her M2 comes out at a whooping 42% for Jane. Not only does it give a normally build-up rate and 15% res ignore for Vivian's Blooms, the AP scaling on them also goes up by 30%, making any AP roll much more valuable. Her M3 and M5 exist, but just barely. Her M4 will guarantee her Feather Blooms and Flying State basic attacks to crit and also grant her 12% combat attack. I know what you are thinking, no, this does unfortunately not make crit Vivian viable. However, on top of that, she starts also the battle with 5 guard feathers, which is honestly a very nice quality of life and also an actual damage gain. For Jane, this results in a fair 12% gain, but for other teams such as Miyabi, Yanagi or Grace, this goes up to 20%, which makes this an actually good Mindscape for these teams. Lastly, her M6, and oh boy, you know where the thumbnail screenshot comes from. 6 million damage nuke, and if you were to optimize this, you can reach up to 12 million, I'm actually quite sure about that. For reference, 12 million would instantly delete the first 8 health bars of the Corruption Complex in Deadly Assault. Anyway, it is probably the most nukey Mindscape in the game, also in terms of text. First up, flat out 40% ether damage. This now also makes attack percent in slot 5 come out ahead just slightly. More flight feather gains. And more importantly, when using her Flying State basic, it will now consume all guard feathers at once and trigger in a bloom which is up to 5 times as strong as your usual blooms, depending on the amount of guard feathers consumed. Because of how her kit now works, she will then also restore some guard feathers back, so you are not left without any. Like, just look at this. Again, I am in fact quite sure hitting 10 or even 12 million is possible. This is outside the stun window after all, so 9 million is very easily here. Anyways, I don't even know how to calculate this correctly, because there are also so many different factors playing into this that I want to refrain from giving you an actual number. Either it can only be wrong, but regardless, it will be very FOMO-y, so I will not do that. The in-game numbers speak for themselves, honestly. So yeah. However, please keep also in mind these numbers are high whale territory, so unless you have not only her, but also your Jane at M6, which conveniently runs at the same banner time, what a coincidence, this is highly unlikely to achieve. I personally would recommend stopping at Mindscape 2. Post-editing riff here, there have been a few changes to Vivian and how she specifically interacts with Jane's M4 and M6. Overall, the changes have been a slight nerf, as Vivian was able to previously trigger Jane's M6 and M4, but even after the changes she can still hit ridiculous numbers. And that said, back to the video. In terms of signature or Mindscape 1, I would recommend her Mindscape 1 and Mindscape 2 over her signature. However, please also keep in mind that weapons have a 75-25 and copies a 50-50 chance. Let's talk about her teams. As you might have noticed, Jane had pretty big numbers, and in my opinion, Jane is also indeed Vivian's best DPS partner. More importantly, however, Vivian really wants Astra. Vivian's damage does not only depend on inflicting anomalies, but also whether or not you can spend all the guard feathers she generates, and with Astra's Tremolos, triggered by the quick assists counting as EX specials, it is by far the best and cheapest way to spend her guard feathers and trigger a bloom. It is not that any team without Astra cannot perform well, it is much more so that it is much harder and feels also really shitty to play. At least in my opinion that is, because you have like all these cool stacks, all these guard feathers, but you can't spend them. Vivian's best teams are Jane, Yanagi and Miyabi. Piper works as well, and she also makes Grace honestly somewhat playable. Her best partner so far is, in my opinion, Jane, where she outperformed Bernice by about 20%. In fact, I got 42k against Pompey at M0 without her signature running Gemini. Vivian is a good replacement for Yanagi in Miyabi teams and can also take Trigger's place in Yanagi hypercarry teams. Although at this point it is not a Yanagi hypercarry team anymore, I guess. If you are looking for a triple anomaly team, I personally would not recommend it, as the internal cooldown of 3 seconds in between which anomalies can be procced have been more annoying than helpful. Regardless, if you want to know more about the teams and my thoughts on them, go check out my full Vivian team guide right here after it is released. Also, if you are interested in learning more about Jane or whether or not she is worth pulling for you, my updated Jane guide will also be out, which you can find right here as well. Lastly, let's also talk about her pros and cons. First up, she is a very strong carry, which is also very cheap to build. She is mainly looking for AP, so stat balancing is less of an issue. But also because she mainly cares about AP, her potential is locked behind RNG. And also, part of her damage depends on your other carry. Actually, a large part of her damage depends on the other carry, which means the better your other carry is, well, the more damage he will do. She also does not really care about skill levels outside of her basics and maybe assist, but putting points into it obviously will increase your damage. She has a great free-to-play weapon choice in Weeping Gemini, and if you are thinking about whaling, her mindscapes are pretty good, I guess. Her kit sounds much more complicated than she actually plays in practice, and she has a fair variety of teammates to choose from. On the other hand, she also does really like Astra, and she does feel also much worse without her. Her iframes are insane, and she feels kinda invulnerable throughout everything she does. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe for more Zenless Zone Zero content. With that, enjoy the showcase, and I wish you a nice day. Peace!
We fighting? Take me.
Pick me, and I promise you'll earn big.
Only the brave will live. I am the Eye of Obel. We fighting? Take me.
pleasure to finally meet you. Headmaid Rena, at your service.
Essence, life's true goal. Not just trails and battles tough. Go take and joy and simple stuff. Even when it's getting rough, take it easy, having fun is just enough. Yeah, the shiny golden side. Let your inner spark ignite. Find a treasure, a growing bright. Reach out for it and take a flight. Lucky or not, at least you tried. Chin up and yourself confined. No doubt, face on the side. You're chosen, so enjoy the ride. There are things you can control. Fortune's fickle, that's its role. Embrace the result, stop keeping score. That's the essence, life's true goal. Not just trails and battles tough. Go take and joy and simple stuff. Even when it's getting rough, take it easy, having fun is just enough. Yeah, the shiny golden side. Let your in.
Let me make this clear in advance. I I'm only here for Lord Phaethon.
Lucky enough, at least you tried. Shaking up in yourself, confined. No doubt, fate's on your side. You're chosen, so enjoy the ride. There are things you can't control. Vultures vacal, that is wrong. Embrace the without, stop, keep it going. That's the essence, life should go. Not just trials, battle stuff. Go take enjoy simple stuff. Even when it's getting rough, take it easy, having fun is just enough. Yeah, the shining golden signs. Let your inner sparking night. Find a treasure, growing bright. Reach your way and take a flight. Lucky enough at
We fighting? Take me. Only the brave will win.
Good day, Lord Phaethon.
Okay. Watch out. Adjusting for wind. Copy the melody of combat.
Gotcha now. Gotcha.
Show no mercy. Recalibrating. That was easy. Increase firepower. You're in my sight. Secured in position.
Ether doesn't activate. That was easy.
I'm here.
Don't know mercy.
Okay.
Got you covered. The melody of combat. I see it. Time to pin them down. I'll pierce right through. You're in my sight.
A cup of coffee isn't just for the early birds. It can also be... You know, coffee is not a must, but a calm and relaxed mindset sure is.
shady dealings, perhaps the mayor can provide you a different perspective. Please take your time to discuss. If you're open to collaborating, I'll set up a call with the mayor so he can speak with you both directly.
I need to discuss this with Wise and Vivian. With so many people involved in this, we need to be very careful.
Of course, I completely understand. When you've made up your minds, you can find me at the Ballet Twins.
Shiyu? Yeah, new Shiyu. We have new Shiyu defense on Friday. You have every A rank M6. Nice. I'm still working on Sokaku, who's M4, and Pokra, who's M4. Very nice. Yeah, we're gonna be back on Friday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Gonna be taking care of the new Shiyu defense, and then from there, I'll probably do some more experimenting with Vivian, and probably work on my Deadly Assault score too. We'll see how that goes. See if I can break 130k again. Hello, Trinity. Thank you for dropping in. I appreciate it. Sorry that I'm ending the stream right now. I do have to get ahead for work tomorrow, but thank you for dropping in. Thank you for saying hi. Really appreciate it.
My dear friends, I'm glad you're willing to keep working.
And for everyone else here,
I'm truly sorry about what
if you want
happened to Mr.
notifications when I go live, make sure to hit that follow button. You can also join the Discord. Links in the chat now.
Mockingbird's actions.
You can join in there, get notifications when I go live, get updates on the channel, on the server. Appreciate the follow, Trinity. Thank you. What was I gonna say? You can get notifications, get updates on the server, the channel. You can hang out. You can ask for help in Zenless. If anybody needs help in Zenless, I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Press forward. My blade is already sheathed.
Oh. Oh fuck. Oh shit, oh shit. Oh no. Oh, you're dead? What the hell? Please die.
It's over.
Come on, come on, come on. It's not doing what I wanted to do. Okay, what's up? Trinity 3. Come on. Holy shit. Okay, that was pretty cool. Damn. Is that faster than my regular party though? Give me one more. Give me one more. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh. Ooh, Primos. Thank you for raiding. Very nice of you.
I'm unstoppable.
Oh, what? You canceled my... I canceled my own stuff.